Everyone, I'm very excited to introduce Ezgi Bilgin. She is a PhD student at Cornell, and she is currently studying in the Department of Human Development, and she already received her master's in cognitive psychology. And Ezgi, I'll allow you to introduce yourself more in depth as well to the audience. So take it away.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today and coming to my presentation, which I will talk about human memory and particularly cover the topic of remembering and forgetting during the pandemic.
And then Tanya, if you want to introduce the topic in Spanish as well for everyone.
Sure. Buenos días todo el mundo. Estamos haciendo las presentaciones por Ezgi Bilgin acerca de recordando y olvidando durante el momento de la pandemia.
Sorry for that.
No, it's okay, yeah. Just to make sure we have the English and Spanish slides coming up as well. Sorry, go ahead. And during the course of the presentation, I just want to let everyone know that questions are encouraged. So feel free to type your questions into the chat room, or if you want to start an open discussion, feel free to use the hand raising function and ask a question as well. And we'd be happy to go over anything. And there will also be a short poll at the end of the presentation just to get some more background on our audience and also gauge whether this presentation was useful to you and what we can improve in the future.
Sí, buenas. Esta presentación estará traducida en español también y entonces tendremos cuestionarios al final de la presentación acerca de si les gustó la presentación para tener más detalle acerca de nuestra audiencia y poder mejorar nuestras presentaciones en un futuro. Si usted tiene alguna pregunta, puede escribirlo en el chat que se encuentra debajo en el botón. Cualquier duda o pregunta lo pueden hacer. Y si también tienen una pregunta, pueden hablar durante la presentación.
Yeah. As Allegra said, I'm a PhD student at Cornell in the Department of Human Development. I got my master's degree in cognitive psychology, and my main research interest is cognitive and social processes that shape human memory. I also try to understand how social media use affects memory functions and its implications on the self.
La señorita Ezgi es estudiante de doctorado en el Departamento de Desarrollo Humano de la Universidad de Cornell. Obtuvo su maestría en Psicología Cognitiva en la Universidad de Kars de Turquía. Se concentra en procesos cognitivos y sociales que dan forma a la memoria humana. Actualmente está estudiando el uso de las redes que afectan las funciones de la memoria y sus complicaciones.
It's the outline that I will follow today. First, I will mention vaccine hesitancy as well as some myths and facts about the COVID-19 vaccine. Then I will explain some reasons of forgetting and factors affecting remembering. To illustrate them better, I will also present my research as a case study to show memory biases.
En el día de hoy, el esquema sería duda ante la vacuna, vacunas COVID-19, mitos versus hechos. ¿Por qué olvidamos? ¿Cómo recordamos? Un estudio de caso que muestra los perjuicios de la memoria, conclusión y mensaje para llevar a casa.
Vaccine hesitancy refers to delay in acceptance or refusal of vaccines. It causes a significant decrease in the protection of people from vaccine-preventable diseases. Under the pandemic, vaccine hesitancy is a serious problem because it makes herd immunity impossible to achieve. It means a large portion of the community cannot become immune to the virus, thus making the spread of virus from person to person very likely. Actually, misinformation has a big role in increasing vaccine hesitancy. Unfortunately, we are surrounded by fake news and conspiracy theories circulating specifically on social media. Therefore, our decision-making informed by these channels may not be as independent as we think.
Duda ante la vacuna. Se refiere a la demora en la aceptación o el rechazo de vacunas a pesar de la disponibilidad de servicio de vacuna. Amenaza los esfuerzos para detener la pandemia y esto ha sido por la alimentación de la desinformación que ha ocurrido durante las redes sociales.
Most importantly, myths spread faster than facts because they don't need to be double controlled or tested. Also, anti-vaccination groups use conspiracy theories and manipulate scientific facts so that myths can seem to be true. Now, I'd like to present most common myths about the COVID-19 vaccine and inform about the facts.
En el día de hoy vamos a hablar sobre los hechos versus los mitos de la COVID-19 de la vacuna, debido a que muchos de los mitos pueden convertirse en hechos sin haberse sido probado o testeado por los científicos que tenemos hoy en día. Hoy en día vamos a presentar los hechos y mitos de la COVID-19.
You take something for the pain, Kalan.
Hello? Of course. Sorry, I couldn't hear if there's a question.
¿Alguna pregunta?
Okay, I'm continue. If you have any question, you can write and we can answer at the end of the presentation.
Si tiene alguna pregunta, puede escribir al final de la presentación.
Of course, it's totally wrong to argue the COVID-19 vaccine can affect women's fertility. The truth is the vaccine encourages the body's immune system to fight the virus, which is unrelated to fertility. Also, it's the same system that we know it works, like mumps, measles, and chickenpox vaccine.
Mito. La vacuna COVID-19 puede afectar la fertilidad de las mujeres. Hecho. La vacuna COVID-19 no afectará la fertilidad. La verdad es que todas las vacunas ayudan a fortalecer su sistema inmunológico, como la vacuna contra las paperas, el sarampión y la varicela.
Another myth is there is no need to be vaccinated if you have already had COVID-19, but scientific evidence showed reinfection with the COVID-19 is always possible. Therefore, vaccination is necessary regardless of previous infection.
Mito. Si ya tuve COVID-19, no necesito una vacuna. Hecho. Una persona que ha tenido el COVID-19 puede más de una vez, incluso si la persona ha sido infectada de la vacuna, puede tener el COVID nuevamente.
This myth is an example of scientific manipulation. Some argue that researchers rushed the development of the COVID-19 vaccine, which causes concerns about vaccine effectiveness and safety. However, the fact is BioNTech and Moderna vaccines are about 95% effective and reported no serious or life-threatening side effects.
Mitos. Los investigadores apresuraron el desarrollo de la vacuna COVID-19, por lo que no se puede confiar en su eficacia y seguridad. Hecho. Los estudios encontraron que las dos vacunas iniciales tienen aproximadamente un 95% de efectividad y no informaron efectos secundarios graves o potencialmente mortales.
Currently, 3 vaccines are authorized and recommended in the US to prevent COVID-19: Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson.
Actualmente, 3 vacunas están autorizadas y recomendadas en los Estados Unidos para prevenir el COVID-19. Está el Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson.
Misinformation and the circulation of myths are very dangerous, but eventually every information is important to the extent that we keep it. If you forget an article based on fake news after immediately reading, it would be hard to say these news interfere with your daily life decisions and affect your life. At this point, what matters is whether we forget or remember misinformation, and what are the conditions to forget. Considering how prevalent misinformation about the COVID-19 vaccine on social media, it's particularly important to know what makes us more fragile to misinformation. I want to answer this question from a cognitive standpoint and discuss the role of memory today. Therefore, I will mention some factors affecting forgetting so that we can have a better understanding about how we keep information about vaccines or we let them fade away.
¿Cómo recordamos la información errónea sobre la vacuna COVID-19? Los olvidaríamos. En este caso estamos tratando de explicar cómo olvidar y recordar ha afectado durante el momento de la pandemia. Hemos realizado y nos hemos dado cuenta que en el momento de que la gente se quiera acordar de lo que pasó durante la pandemia, muchas veces tiene que ver cuando olvidaron aquellos momentos de la pandemia o viceversa. Por eso vamos a hablar en este caso algunos hechos de recordar y algunos hechos de olvidar que ha ocurrido durante la pandemia. Y todo esto se trata sobre el COVID-19.
First, forgetting helps decrease negative emotions. There are moments in life you feel better when you forget an event that makes you feel uncomfortable. Indeed, most of the time, we don't exactly remember all details about stressful events. Actually, this type of forgetting has a function and helps attenuate negative emotions that might be triggered by negative past events. Second, sometimes we forget to justify inappropriate behavior. Forgetting might be a common excuse when people make a mistake, and it decreases the responsibility of inappropriate behavior. For example, if someone forgets what she did, she cannot be accused of this behavior anymore. Third, we forget to preserve our self-image. In general, people are likely to forget their failures more than they forget their accomplishments, because remembering failures can damage self-esteem, so we are very biased to remember our positive memories. Lastly, we forget incidents that aren't in line with our beliefs and attitudes. For example, if we don't believe climate change, we are likely to ignore climate change and forget the relevant articles. Of course, all examples I have mentioned so far show unconscious forgetting, which means although people might benefit from forgetting, they actually don't forget consciously. It just happens to them. So when we forget something, most of the time we are not aware of these forgetting processes. To sum up, what these 4 points have in common is that they show motivation guides forgetting, which means forgetting occurs in line with motivations and interests. By saying motivation, I mean the desire that compels us to stick with our goals. For example, if I want to run a marathon, I'm motivated to do exercise that makes me prepare for running a marathon. But if I don't have such a wish, then I wouldn't have the motivation to exercise related to running a marathon. Therefore, assuming that you are a healthy person without any neurological diseases, if you forget something and wonder why it happens, I would suggest you to reconsider your motivations and goals.
¿Por qué olvidamos? 1. Atenuar las emociones negativas. Esto quiere decir que cuando nosotros estamos sufriendo o estamos pasando un mal rato, olvidamos cosas importantes. Justificar el comportamiento inapropiado. Esto quiere decir que cuando nosotros estamos más a justo con nuestra manera de comportarnos, tratamos de olvidar para justificar el comportamiento de nuestras reacciones. Preservar la imagen de uno mismo. Esto quiere decir que cuando uno mismo ha hecho muchos logros y rechazos, uno trata de recordar más lo que ha fallido que los logros. Esto hace que nuestra autoestima se baje. Y también tenemos actitudes y creencias. Cuando nosotros creemos más en algo, estamos más a justo de creer lo que creemos en vez de ver los hechos que ha estado ante nuestros ojos. La motivación guía el olvido. Un ejemplo es, si usted está motivado a correr una maratón, usted va a hacer todo posible para hacerlo. De lo contrario, esto es lo mismo con olvidar. Cuando usted trata de olvidar las situaciones durante la pandemia, esto hace que usted se motive. Si usted ha estado olvidando lo que ha pasado en la pandemia, es muy importante que reconsidere lo que ha estado haciendo para motivarse y hacerlo.
Affects forgetting also affects remembering, and our motivations affect which information we keep in our minds. For example, research shown that people remember information that supports their views better than opposing information, which is called confirmation bias. I will give an example. Let's say Sally is in support of gun control. She seeks out news and opinion pieces that reaffirm the need for limitations on gun ownership. When she hears stories about shootings in the media, she interprets them in a way that supports her existing beliefs and remembers them in a detailed way as evidence to support her beliefs. However, on the other hand, Henry, let's say, is opposed to gun control. He seeks out news that is aligned with his position. When he comes across news stories about shootings, he interprets them in a way that supports his current point of view, or he forgets them because shootings don't support his beliefs. Actually, the fact that motivation guides forgetting and remembering shows our memories can be biased. So we don't remember everything as accurately as we think.
¿Y qué me dices recordar? La motivación afecta no solo el olvido, sino también el recuerdo. Las personas recuerdan mejor la información que respalda sus puntos de vista que la información opuesta. Sesgo de confirmación. Un ejemplo es una persona que vive en un lugar donde hay mucha delincuencia. Cuando ellos van a otros lugares que no es su hogar, ellos se acuerdan de lo que ha pasado en su alrededor y utilizan eso para recordar los hechos que están viviendo. Quiere decir que la motivación no solo afecta el olvido, sino también el recuerdo, dependiendo de cómo la persona ha estado viviendo, de sus creencias y lo que ha estado experimentando.
Memory bias might have an implication on fake news. Fake news is news or stories created to deliberately misinform or deceive readers. So it's not accurate, and fake news aims to influence views or political motives.
Las noticias falsas son noticias o historias creadas para desinformar o engañar deliberadamente a los lectores. Tienen como objetivo influir en las opiniones o por motivos políticos. Esto se ha visto mucho en las redes sociales donde las personas crean contenido para desengañar y engañar a todas aquellas personas sobre el COVID-19 y de otras noticias importantes.
Memory bias that I have mentioned impacts the spread of misinformation and fake news on social media. I will give you an example. Suppose that you read a fake article saying Michelle Obama deletes Hillary Clinton from Twitter. If you are a supporter of Obama giving right to her to unfollow Clinton on Twitter, probably you will be more likely to remember this incident and share it in your account. But it's actually fake news. Therefore, my point is, characteristics of human memory is important to consider if we want to understand the increased prevalence of misinformation on social media and if we want to struggle with misinformation.
Los perjuicios de la memoria afectan la difusión de información errónea en Internet. Es probable que las personas crean noticias falsas que se alineen con sus perspectivas. Las noticias falsas son difíciles de detectar si son concurrentes con las actitudes. Un ejemplo, en este caso, es Michelle Obama eliminó a Hillary Clinton de su Twitter. Si usted apoya a Michelle Obama, usted tiene la probabilidad de recordarse esa información porque se alinea a lo que usted cree. Esto quiere decir que muchas informaciones falsas han sido sumamente esparcida debido a cómo las personas crean y creen en ciertas personas o creencias.
Having acknowledged that misinformation is a serious threat, I can ask two questions. Where do you get your news nowadays? Is it the source, social media, or print newspapers? And do you question the facts offered by your chosen news source?
¿De dónde sacas hoy tus noticias? ¿Cuestiona los hechos ofrecidos por la fuente de noticias que eligió? Usted usualmente cuando ve las noticias, usted lo obtiene en los periódicos, revistas o en sus redes sociales como el Facebook, el Twitter, el Instagram.
Well, I ask these questions because I want to say that motivation doesn't affect only memory, but also social media behavior. For example, fact-checking is less likely to occur for information that supports our views, which is very unfortunate because we can be misguided for the sake of finding a supporting evidence for our views. Considering that the world has been in a pandemic mode for a year and a half, this biased behavior is a serious problem. What if our decision-making is guided by misinformation? How would we protect our health?
Es menos probable que ocurra la verificación de hechos para la información que respalda nuestro punto de vista, un factor que contribuye a difundir información errónea. Muchos de los desinformaciones que ha ocurrido es porque estamos alineándonos con nuestro punto de vista y esto hace que nuestra motivación sea la desinformación. Estamos acostumbrados a creer hechos que respaldan nuestras creencias y nuestro punto de vista. Esto hace que nosotros creamos en la desinformación más que la información, a pesar de que hay hechos que respaldan la información correcta.
Now, I want to talk about a case study to show memory biases related to COVID-19 vaccine. We conducted a research and asked mainly these two questions. We asked, first, do people supporting vaccination remember pro-vaccine information better than anti-vaccine information? Second, we asked, do vaccinated people remember pro-vaccine information better than those who are not vaccinated? By saying vaccination, I mean COVID-19 vaccination, and similarly, pro-vaccine information was about, and pro-vaccine and anti-vaccine information was about the COVID-19 vaccine.
Un estudio de caso que muestra los perjuicios de la memoria. Pregunta de investigación que se realizó. 1. Las personas que apoyan la vacunación recuerdan mejor la información a favor de la vacuna que la información en contra de la vacuna. 2. Las personas vacunadas contra el COVID-19 recuerdan mejor la información a favor de la vacuna que las que no están vacunadas. Las preguntas acerca de la vacuna es sobre el COVID-19.
We found first, people supporting vaccination and those who didn't differ from each other in terms of remembering pro-vaccine and anti-vaccine information. So they remembered them equally well. There was no difference between them. Therefore, we showed beliefs about vaccination didn't affect memory about the COVID-19 vaccine. However, secondly, we found that vaccinated people remembered pro-vaccine information better than those who weren't vaccinated, which means the current COVID-19 vaccination behavior affected memory. Therefore, based on these findings, our general conclusion is that not beliefs, but behaviors affect remembering. We can also argue what affects our memories most is not what we believe, about how we behave, and we remember information to affirm our current behaviors.
Encontramos la influencia de los perjuicios en la memoria durante este estudio. Las personas que apoyaron la vacunación general y las que no lo hicieron se no se diferenciaron entre sí en términos de recordar la información a favor y en contra de la vacuna. Creencias sobre la vacunación no afectaron la memoria. Esto quiere decir que las personas que estaban vacunadas y las que no estaban vacunadas no afectaron la creencia sobre la vacuna, pero ellos encontraron otros estudios que las personas vacunadas recordaron la información a favor de la vacuna mejor que las que no fueron vacunadas. El comportamiento actual de vacunación contra el COVID-19 afectó la memoria. Esto quiere decir que no las creencias, sino los comportamientos afectan el recuerdo.
Second message, I can say, always be aware that people tend to seek and interpret their memories in a way that confirms their beliefs and behaviors. Therefore, always look for ways to challenge what you think.
Conclusión y mensajes para llevar a casa. Tenga en cuenta que las personas tienden a buscar e interpretar sus recuerdos de una manera que confirme sus creencias y comportamiento e incluso su punto de vista. Es muy importante que busque forma de desafiar lo que piensa.
Before finishing, I also would like to mention a few solutions to deal with the crisis of fake news and misinformation about the COVID-19. So always evaluate what you read. Most importantly, we don't know everything about the COVID-19 vaccine, and scientists discover a new thing about the virus every day. Therefore, it's very critical that what you read should be the most current information. Also, the source of the news should be knowledgeable and have authority on the subject. Indeed, accuracy matters a lot. We can trust most scientific-based knowledge because it's supported by evidence which has a high level of accuracy. Lastly, we can question the purpose of the news. Is it to outrage? Is it to sell or to inform? By using this criteria, we will have a good starting point to evaluate what we read, thus making us more powerful to fight against misinformation.
Por último, queríamos decirle cómo hacer frente a las crisis de noticias falsas y la desinformación sobre el COVID-19. Muy importante, evalúe. Lo más importante es ver qué tan actual es la información que usted está leyendo, si fue de este año, hace 5 años, recientemente o hace mucho. La autoridad. ¿Quién es el que está publicando esta información? La persona es alguien que está licenciada o tiene conocimiento acerca de la información. Precisión. ¿Qué tan exacto y correcto es la información o la noticia que está leyendo? Objetivo. ¿Cuál es el objetivo de la noticia? Para seguir haciendo que usted crea en algo o hacer que usted deje de creer en algo. Dependiendo de qué es lo que usted lee, es muy importante evaluar estos 3 puntos de vista para que usted se informe más y no crea mucho en la desinformación que ocurre en las noticias falsas o por las redes sociales. Que esto hace que su comportamiento haga que usted crea más en la desinformación que en la información.
Thanks so much. Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, thank you so much, Ezgi. And now I think for the last portion, I'd like to open the floor if anyone has any questions or comments to share. I know we got a very insightful comment from Mimi about her own observations in her community and how she's noticing people who are hesitant. She sees evidence of forgetting among recovered COVID people, which includes their reasoning for still being unvaccinated, which I also thought was very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And if anyone else wants to comment or ask any questions, feel free to include it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask or comment aloud as well.
Si alguien tiene alguna pregunta, duda, pueden realizarlo durante el chat o pueden hablar durante esta presentación.
light of what the conclusions for the study, what are the ways or thoughts that you might have about how information is presented on social media to shift change? I would agree with Mimi that there is a need for storytelling, and storytelling by folks who are trusted messengers
Mhm.
or who have a way of communicating in a way that doesn't downplay or denigrate the knowledge base of the person listening or reading. So just to repeat the question, what is it, how should we be communicating to people to get them to act in a certain way? Is that a part of what your study hopes to influence?
So my study showed that our behaviors affect which information we keep our minds. So let's assume a person is not vaccinated. The current behavior is to be against vaccines. Then probably this person would have attitudes regarding anti-vaccination. So it would be difficult to educate this person. So it is the first point. Secondly, if we know this finding, maybe we can provide some scientific evidence. If our proofs will be strong enough, maybe behavior can be shifted, even if it doesn't support our views. So my answer is first point to keep in mind, behaviors is important. So if you cannot change this behavior, and if you know that this memory will be biased because of behaviors, then please provide strong evidence, which will be scientific evidence.
So so I respect that response, and I'll offer this. In many of the communities I'm in, all the folks may be anti-vaxxers, and they practice their lifestyle in a way that they believe supports their healthiness. And they have a belief that if they're taking the immunity cocktail or they're eating healthfully, they're not going to get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have, in addition to this belief system, their behaviors support are healthy to them, right? They're eating healthy, they're taking supplements, they're quarantining, they're doing all the things that they're being asked to do. Where do we go from there? Because I think there's a challenge. These are also folks who might believe that science is not truthful,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
even if you take away folks' belief about the people of color being the targeted or being the study group, they believe that the communicators who are scientists are
Mm-hmm.
not honest or twist the information to the way that they want to get them to be vaccinated, right? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe the person who delivers this kind of message can be a person who they can trust. So even if something is scientific, if this message is delivered from a person or from a source that you don't very well or that you don't trust, probably you wouldn't take into account. It
thank
might
you.
be an answer, it might be a solution.
Thank you.
I also see Mimi's hand is raised, so feel free to share.
Okay. I think that one of the fundamental problems is that we, as people who believe in vaccines, offer ourselves as people who know better, and we have to educate those who are anti-vax because they don't know, they don't understand. We have to re-explain and re-explain. When in my experience, I've met people who are very well educated, people who have, been to college, and people with master's degrees who are, who have gotten COVID and were anti-vax and never told anyone. And I feel that the secrecy is really the hugest problem. Beyond being anti-vax, it's the secrecy about your health status and your vaccination status, both. Because I'm not feeling well is also something that people are afraid to say. Because, you know, they're afraid that maybe it's the beginning of COVID. And in one case that I know, someone has spread it, being afraid to say something before it was confirmed that she did indeed have COVID. I think that's the bigger problem, that we approach anti-vaxxers as if they're not educated enough to understand, when really the hesitancy and the secrecy are the bigger problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely agree. And also, we create some kind of hierarchy. So,
Yes.
of course, pro-vaccination attitudes is, I mean, these attitudes should be encouraged, but if we disvalue people's opinions, then we wouldn't be successful to change their behaviors if we create a hierarchy. And it would be a kind of epistemological violence based on the knowledge, based on the true knowledge.
Yes, I agree. I just wanted to reiterate, it really is more the point that I already wrote, but I just think that's a huge issue that has to be addressed at some point.
I also see Maurice's hand raised as well.
Yes, my question would be around beliefs and behaviors. I have a problem with this because it's like a reverse. I thought the beliefs would affect the behavior, but you say it's the other way around. The behavior will make a belief negative or positive. So could you explain this a little better?
So my findings show that our beliefs, so even though our beliefs show that, I mean, even though people are against vaccination in their belief system, and even if people are supporting vaccine in their belief system, remembering pro-vaccine and anti-vaccine information doesn't differ for them. So belief system doesn't affect it, the difference between the difference in remembering pro-vaccine and anti-vaccine information. This is what I found. But on the other hand, behavior made a difference. Vaccinated people remembered better pro-vaccine information, which is in line with their behavior. On the other hand, non-vaccinated people remembered anti-vaccine information better than pro-vaccine information, so which is supporting evidence with their behavior. So it is a finding. And of course, I know that actually you are right that we expect that beliefs affect behavior, but maybe in the context of COVID-19, what matters most is our current behavior rather than our beliefs. So maybe it would be better if we interpret the findings in the context of COVID-19.
Okay, so thank you for explaining this. Now, further into the same subject, I would like to know if the memory is blocking certain information in order to justify the behavior. How does it work?
Yeah, so memory works in line with our goals and motivations. So in order to preserve our self-image, self-knowledge, maybe our memory just records information that supports our views and forgets information or prevents us from accessing this information if it's something negative for us. This is what I want to say for your answer, for your question.
Yeah, thank you. So it clarifies a little bit my hesitancy, my doubt. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think it's very important you study to link this behavior and the memory together. So thank you very much.
I thank you. As a more clarification, maybe I can add that people generally tend to think that memories are like cameras that records everything. But the fact is, our memory is not camera. I mean, not camera recording everything, but it's biased. So we record things, we record information in line with our goals. So it's not working like a camera, but it works in a biased way.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also saw Nydia's hand raised previously.
No, Mauricio asked the question I was gonna ask.
Oh, okay, great, even better. Any additional questions or comments? And all of you have provided such great insight as well.
I have a question about the whole notion of facts and fiction with social media. And maybe you could help me understand that. For folks who look to social media for what they consider to be facts and truth, and so readily share much of that information without any kind of fact checking or, questioning it, with comments like they said, or these people, or some researchers, somebody researched this and feel so comfortable in just those claims without any true checking of the facts. That explained. I would like to, if you could give me some kind of an explanation based on what you researched about that conviction, those convictions, and the source of them, without any kind of questioning of those particular sources, especially if it's lined up with what they believe and what they want to believe.
So I talked about that not only our memory, but also our social media behavior are affected our beliefs. So as you said, if we remember, if we come across news that supports our views, then we are less likely searching facts or searching alternative sources. We just believe it. Okay, I saw this news and there is no need for fact checking. It already supports my beliefs. Then it will be okay to remember this information, to have this information, and even I can share it in my social media account. This is general social media behavior. This is a general tendency of people in social media. And actually, it is one of the reasons why misinformation spreads so very fastly.
Yes. And so one of the things that, in terms of my conversations with people who are spreading those things is or who pass them on, is that the social media world monitors their use, and that the more they support certain kinds of messages, the more they're somehow fed it. So more feeds come up in their viewing and get sent to them based on some of their actual behavior. So even if you are not in support of either whatever feeling you have about vaccinations, if you're anti-vaxxer and you're passing on information, that more information like that gets sent to you, because of how the social media accounts are set up, through the system, and having people be fed what they think people like or want to hear more about. So it's a certain level of manipulation, in my opinion, that they're unaware of.
Yeah, social media is completely a different world. There are many marketing strategies that we are not very well aware of. So it's completely different world and different strategies, social psychology strategies, and different ways of misleading people.
Yeah.
Nydia, did you just raise your hand
Yeah,
again?
I just have a concern because I've been hearing a lot from participants that I work with, but also family member, very big, because they feel like they're being forced to do this, and when they see that some of the nurses and the staff that works in the hospital are protesting not to take the test, then they feel more convinced that they don't want to do this. If they're protesting and they're in the hospital and they see what's going on in the hospital and the nurses themselves don't want to do it, it makes them feel like, why should I do it? See, they're not doing it, so they know something that we don't know. So this is what I've been hearing a lot. So if you can tell a person to do this and they're seeing it from a nurse, and people work in a hospital, I don't see how you can convince them to take it. It makes it very hard when you see that.
You're right. I don't know either.
Huh?
I don't know either. You're right.
Yeah, we also got another question from Maurice, building off of what he mentioned before. He asked, do you believe that there is such a thing as cultural memory, positive or negative?
It's a question for Ezgi.
Yeah, Ezgi, from Maurice. Do you believe there's such a thing as cultural memory, positive or negative?
So are you asking that cultural memory is positive thing or negative thing? Is it what you are asking?
I'll have Maurice, if you want to clarify a bit. Maybe he might be mentioning
Whether it exists.
Yeah, whether it exists, and I guess how our background, our culture, where we're from, influences how we remember and our
Of course,
beliefs.
yeah, of course, culture affects our memories because culture provides us a script to see the world. So based on this script, we give more value to certain things, or we ignore the facts. Think about if you are a person who lived in the US during your whole life, you are more specific to perceive things regarding American culture, and you probably ignore something, I don't know, Canadian or something Italian, because it's not your perception, it's not your expertise. So as a result, you are more likely to record information regarding American culture compared to Italian culture, because in your script, there's no information regarding Italian culture. That's why you are biased to inform, to record information in a certain way, in line with your culture. So actually, if you think that culture, beliefs, behaviors, all of them are very related. All of them provides us with knowledge regarding the world, so that we perceive the world very easily. Yeah, so culture is important, and culture is an element for defining our memories.
And Maurice, if you want to clarify or add anything else to your question, feel free to as well. I didn't want to assume I knew what you meant by that.
Yeah, I just wanted to know how culture can affect the choice or the behavior. I don't know if I could do that, but here where I live in Greenpoint, the majority is Polish culture. And for some reason, when I go to a store, some people who are, I believe, intelligent or well informed, they are intelligent, but they're not well informed, I guess. But culturally, they refuse to believe in the vaccine. So it's just a whole block of people here in Greenpoint that you know in advance that they are not pro-vaccine. And I don't know if it's historical, it's because of the past, and so on and so forth. So it's what I wanted to clarify. Is there a cultural memory in groups of people that would be refusing, for example, the vaccine?
Yeah.
So this is Jeff. First of all, Ezgi, thanks a lot for doing this talk with everybody today. And Maurice, I sort of wanted to address your question a little bit. For those who don't know, sorry, let me take off my mask so you can actually hear me. So for those who don't know, the CTSC has been running COVID-19 vaccine clinics in several highly affected, underserved communities across New York City. So Washington Heights, East New York, Harlem, as well as Jamaica, Queens. And these communities, despite being the most, I guess, lowest vaccination rates in New York City, we actually ended up shutting down the sites about a month ago because of lack of demand. Nobody was coming to get vaccinated. And it's one of the things that we talk a lot to the community members. So all these sites were actually in churches and staffed by members of the churches to do these vaccines. And I talked a lot to the community members who are helping us run these churches. And your point about culture is sort of really spot on, because a lot of these communities, for the people, there are a lot of individuals you would go out to street, they didn't want to get a vaccine, even though the vaccine was being administered by people they knew, they trusted. And a lot of it goes down to, I think, an impact of culture. Because a lot of these communities, they don't have a culture or a history of interacting with the medical system. And that is as much a failing of the medical system in the United States as it is anything, on their part. Medicine has traditionally neglected a lot of communities across New York City, not just New York City, across the United States, across the world. And then for primary reason being cost, they're not, they don't have the money to be worth the services in the minds of medical community. And so as a result, interactions with a lot of these people, they've never really interacted with the healthcare system outside severe illness or sickness. And so now we're asking them who've not really had a positive relationship with healthcare their entire life to come in and trust us and get this vaccine. A lot of people, that's just not adding up. And it's not that these people don't believe in a vaccine, it's just that they've had negative experiences or lack of experience whatsoever with the healthcare system in the past. It's a huge hurdle to convince these people to suddenly trust the healthcare system, come in, and that this time will be different than every other time in the past. And so I think, yes, part of that is cultural, but also, culture is defined by the actions that we as society take. I don't think there's anything inherently cultural that these people don't have access to healthcare. That's nothing to do with their, I guess, racial or ethnic culture, but it has to do with the culture of the United States and how we neglect certain people because of their race or their income level. And so I just wanted to bring that point up because I've thought a lot about it because people keep asking me, why did you shut down these sites when the vaccine rates in these communities are 40, 50%? And I've thought a lot about it over the last month. And really that's, I think, the best, based on all the people I've spoke to, all the clergy, that's the best reason, all the community members who had told me, no, I don't want the vaccine. It's really, how do you convince somebody that this time is different, no matter what? You can give them the facts and give them numbers, but as Ezgi was saying, people only remember the facts that support their own arguments. And if they hear constantly changing information, like people saying that, hey, this vaccine is safe. Oh no, it causes blood clots. Or, once you get the vaccine, you can do anything you want and not wear a mask. Oh, never mind, you still have to wear a mask. That conflicting information doesn't help. And that only just... Yeah, and that's
Thank-
pretty much it.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I just want to jump in. I think that I would say that there is a racial component to it as well as a gender component that often gets dismissed or not acknowledged. And it's not just about the ways that some of these communities have experienced or been utilized as research subjects, because that's the first thing that we hear in the community and even with scientists or medical professionals. But I really think, because even as I heard you speaking, and I was on a call yesterday and they're talking about what we're going to do with Corona, and I heard alternative practitioners educating folks about like using the CDC site, looking at the ingredients and the pinpointing very scientific information, and then saying, and this is why we shouldn't vaccinate, right? I think language is very important. And I feel that even when I listen, I experience like a sort of a fluency or fluidity in the truthfulness of the information. So for example, like you said, if you take the vaccine, like there are a lot of people that still believe that the vaccine is preventive for COVID. And we know it's not, right? It doesn't prevent you from getting COVID if you're vaccinated. So then folks say, so why should I get vaccinated? And I don't think the community, outside of saying, hey, you should get vaccinated to protect others. And folks say, well, how does my taking a vaccine shot, putting something in my body, be protective for others? And so I think that the way that we're communicating, and I think it was stated earlier, as opposed to just educating people, because we're dealing with educated folks in many instances. We're not dealing with folks that have cognitive deficiencies. We're dealing with folks that are whole humans. I'm a mental health professional, and I heard it said once that also think about folks who might refuse vaccination as being very fearful about what the vaccine would do, even though it's being said it's going to help you. Well, if folks are thinking, well, if I don't get it, how's it going to help me? If I don't get coronavirus, how's it going to help me? The idea that they could get it in the future is not enough to persuade them to do vaccination. So I definitely appreciate the way that this research study is talking about belief and values. I think our challenge is communication and honoring where people are coming from, not just based on what we read, but what they're really saying and how we're communicating that message.
Thank you, Diane. And I just had one question, not to sort of, first of all, thank you very much. Eski, did you want to say anything else before I just sort of ask the question to the group?
No, thank you. Thank you for joining us today, for everyone, and coming to my presentation. And there were great questions. It's been lovely discussion points. I thank you for all of you.
Thank you very much, Eski. And before we hop off, I just wanted to ask the group here, what if anybody has any opinions on vaccine mandates? Like, should it be required that everybody in the US gets a vaccine? Should it not be required? It's one of the things that there's a lot of discussion as I was hoping if anybody was willing to share their thoughts about it.
I'm willing to share. This is Diane again. I feel that people in public facing positions or roles should get the vaccine or be mandated. Now, if they don't want to, then they should not remain in those jobs, because they should not expose other people or present contradictory behavior that is going to harm or damage other people. So just like I think it was Nydia or Nilda was saying, her community, people she's serving, are seeing the nurses, the health professionals who's supposed to have more science, they have 9 degrees, saying, oh, no, I'm not going to take the vaccine. So how would we convince the average person that this is helpful? And the logic or reasoning that they may present may not even be consistent with a logic, I think a geometry, in a way that's going to get to an accurate solution based on fundamental concepts. So if my trusted medical providers are refusing, then why would I do it, right? And that I think is important. For everybody else, people get to make a choice. And I noticed that what people will do is they have made a choice to not, some people, some groups have made choices not to socialize, and other groups are still maybe a little bit reckless and unconcerned or invincible. But that's maybe a mental health or a mental well-being strategy to approach to vaccination.
Thank you very much. Did anybody else have thoughts on vaccine mandates? Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. I guess I should also answer my own question to everybody. I really started thinking about this because part of the people I work with is in China. And so China is, as for those who don't know, is a very authoritarian government. And they have implemented a nationwide sort of mandate and rules for vaccines. Theirs is a little unusual though, in that all working age individuals are mandated to get the vaccine, whereas individuals who are over a certain age are not allowed to get the vaccine. Pretty much the opposite of what we have here in the US. So 65 or older, you're not even allowed to get the vaccine. Whereas everybody younger than that, you have to get it in order to support the economy. And so it's interesting because at least, statistically, the Chinese government has done a much better job than other large nations of keeping COVID cases under control. Obviously, they've done it through very authoritarian means, strict quarantines, strict enforcement of it. And so the question that's come up a lot in sort of in how to deal with COVID in the United States is, and whether or not to implement a vaccine mandate is, obviously, if you go full authoritarian government, go a dictatorship kind of role, you can control COVID. But sort of like what steps? Obviously, that's wrong though, because you're sacrificing freedom for the sake of controlling it, and that's very bad. But at some point, there is a question of what things are allowable to do. Can you force people to or mandate people to get a vaccine? Is that an acceptable means to try to control? So it's sort of that trade-off, right? What can you implement on public health side to protect as many lives as possible and save as many lives as possible without minimally restricting freedoms? I know that's a very difficult question, and I don't think anybody has a good answer, which is why I wanted to get everybody else's thoughts. But personally, I also am supportive, of a mandate of anybody who needs to go out in public and face other individuals. Then I do believe you should, be mandated to get the vaccine. If you're not interacting with people and you're willing to stay home and isolate yourself, then there's no need to get a vaccine. But yeah, so I figured I'd share my thoughts since I asked the
question. I hear that saying you mandated to take the vaccine or be tested regularly. And
in the US, yes.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So you're giving them a choice, and with the choice, they're saying, you know what, I'll just go get tested regularly instead of taking the vaccine. So it's just like you giving them that option, and they're still not going to take the vaccine. So I feel they should be mandated to take that shot, especially if you have a position that you are dealing with the public and they're looking at you. So instead of getting tested regularly, they should mandate them to get the shot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, my personal belief is that, like I said, is that at some point, people who are in public interacting with others, there should be a mandate to get that vaccine. Even that if that is, anti-personal choice, anti-freedom, or whatever people claim it to be, I think that is, a worthwhile trade-off to protect the general good. And Maurice, my name is Jeff Zhu. I serve as the Managing Director of Community Engagement and Research here at Weill Cornell Medicine, to answer your question.
So I think that also speaks to, and this is looking at a structural, a systemic way, when people in public, especially critical or essential public facing positions, they've taken a...
Oops, Diane, you muted yourself again by accident.
Somebody was calling in while I was on the phone to protect the public, right? And even to protect themselves, but they may not be doing it, right? And it compromises how hospitals or other places can staff, right? So if the nurses or folks are not taking it, the doctors are not taking it, the firefighters are not taking it, those staff pools are essentially going to decrease, and then the larger society is at risk, right? even you look at the folks who are, we don't know who's going to get COVID or not and how it's going to affect them, but even the use of hospital beds. So people will die that were vaccinated and have other emergent needs because they're taken up by folks who may have been able to prevent the severity of their situation. And those include professionals. So I think that even expanding it beyond your individual action is how does your individual action affect the larger system, and being able to consider that in your decision making.
Well, one piece of good news actually is that if you look at sort of individuals who are quote unquote essential workers, the vaccination rates on them are actually a lot higher than the general public for their particular communities. And it's one thing I found interesting because traditionally when I go into the communities we serve, the men are very reluctant to get any sort of shot or healthcare access, except I found is that individuals who are serving as frontline, so restaurant workers, delivery workers, taxi drivers, those individuals, those men actually were very eager to get the vaccine, and this is across all the communities we went to. And it's interesting, even in the hospitals like NYP here, the people refusing to get the vaccine are not the staff who actually work in the hospital in the COVID ward. It's the staff that are basically not seeing patients or seeing patients remotely, the research staff or the administrative support staff. The doctors and nurses that are actually treating people on the wards, the vaccination rate there are extremely high. Now, obviously not everybody, but much higher than the whole. So I think definitely people who are in the front lines and see the impact of COVID are more likely to get the vaccine. There's definitely, I don't have definitive scientific proof of that yet. I think people are actually looking into it, but at least, from what I've seen and what my colleagues have told me, there's definitely a strong correlation there.
Yeah, that's.
Can I ask a
Sorry.
question?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this was answered yet, but I just want to take a step back a little bit. I know I've taken the vaccine. I'm okay with it, but we have this saying, or there's a saying that we need to take the vaccine to protect ourselves and protect, each other. But the vaccine does not prevent us from getting the COVID. So how are we protecting others, even if we do take the vaccine and there's a possibility that we're still going to get the COVID? So I always get that question. Okay, well, they say that the vaccine is going to help me maybe not die, but it doesn't prevent me from not getting the virus. How is that protecting anyone else around me when I'm still going to get it regardless of taking the vaccine or not?
Yeah, so that's actually a good question. I think somebody else just posted a question too about anti-vaccine scientists and health professionals posting facts. So the thing about facts statistics is that they can be turned either way, right? So let's look at the Pfizer vaccine, it's the most common vaccine right now. We're looking at a rate about 85%. The numbers keep changing, start out 95, but we're looking at right now, it's about 85% effective in preventing COVID. So that number gets tossed around a lot. People say you should get the vaccine because 85% of the time you won't get COVID. The other people say, well, 50% of the time you're gonna get it anyway, why bother getting the vaccine? And that's the problem because facts can be bent by can be misconstrued, can be interpreted in different ways to achieve certain political or individual goals. And that's true. I mean, the number there doesn't change, but both sides can use that argument to support their own case based on the numbers. And so to answer I guess John Antoni's question, I mean, the facts are the facts. The numbers aren't changing, but how those are interpreted and how they're used to support an argument is what's different. And to the individuals who say, why should I get the vaccine? If yes, 85% of it only works 85% of the time, but it's working over 99% of the time in preventing hospitalizations and death. And so I think the better way to argue it is that by taking the vaccine, you may not prevent yourself from getting COVID, but you prevent yourself from getting hospitalized or die because of COVID. And the question of how do we get out of this crisis, if a lot of people talk about herd immunity, can we ever reach it? But it is a scientific fact that if you reach a high enough vaccine rate, you can eliminate the virus. And you can, that is one way to get life back to normal. So that's one thing you can tell people, every single person helps us get into the rate. We don't know what percentage it could be. It could be 70% of the population. It might need 90% of the population. We still don't know. But eventually, if we can get enough people vaccinated, we can eliminate COVID. So hopefully.
So I guess we have to maybe bring in, well, if you do take it, it's going to prevent you from going to the hospital and prevent death.
Right.
So it's may not, well, I guess you said 85%. It may not prevent you from not getting it, but it's going to prevent you from getting it severely. So I think that's one of the things that we have to stress on a lot more.
Yeah. Right. And it's still 85% effective. It's pretty good, actually.
I agree with Millie. Like, I think that's, at least in the way I communicate with people, I'm a COVID-19 survivor. I didn't, as far as I know, I didn't do anything to get it. I was in the first wave, very early stage, and I got it very severely. I was hospitalized. So when I tell my story, I talk to people, I say, like, this vaccine is not preventing you from getting COVID, but just like addiction, when anybody tries their first recreational use of something, you don't know who's going to become the addict or the alcoholic. So the same thing with this, you might get COVID, but we don't know who's going to be the person who gets the sniffles or the person who's going to need oxygen treatment or a kidney transplant as a result. Are you willing to take that chance? What is it that you're willing to do to protect yourself? I think what also happens is that because we have to get boosters, like, I think it needs to be a longitudinal conversation highlighting a point you just made, which I had not thought about it that way, which is it hasn't been around long enough for us to know anything definitive. Only time will tell, right? It's people like me and those new and in the continuum who will continue to get this information. However, we're going to try things over a period of time because it's just so new. But you just said, Jeff, I think that people, we don't know what the number is to get into herd immunity, but scientifically, epidemiologically, it has been proven if we get to that number that we could eradicate the virus, right? Well, let's have that conversation. Let's talk to them about how they're going to participate in eradicating the virus. And these are the options. And that's what goes back to my earlier statement about language and how we're communicating information, because those are key things. I'm hearing that in that language and in a receivable way today. I didn't hear that previously. So some folks might want to participate in eradicating the virus so that we don't have to deal with this in 5 years. But it might take us 5 years to get there. So that's my 2 points. And thanks for sharing that. That's at least one nugget. I have a few other nuggets, but thank you for that. I'll use that in my communication.
Thank you. And I guess Allegra, anything else? I know we went over a little bit, so apologize to everybody.
No, I think everyone's comments were so great, and just going off of everything we don't know yet, I think there's still so much we don't know about the Delta variant and how easy it is to get it. I know that it's easier to get the Delta variant versus the original one, which also just emphasizes the fact that we all do need to be getting vaccinated to prevent further mutations of the virus as well. And I think for myself too, I recently had one of my friends who's fully vaccinated got COVID, and it really made me pause and think and get scared because I'm vaccinated as well. And I thought that I was protected and safe and doing everything right. And it's concerning to trust so heavily in the vaccine and then realize that sometimes things like this do happen. And it just emphasizes the fact that the more people vaccinated, the better, and to keep spreading that message, but in the most compassionate and I think comprehensive way, and taking into consideration people's backgrounds and how that informs the way that they view this vaccine and the world in general. So I think that's very important to move forward as well. Besides that, that's my only input. And if anyone else has something to add as well.
I guess, Ezgi, I guess we'll give you a chance to do some closing thoughts.
Keep it in mind that I'm not expert on vaccine, so I just examined vaccine in relation to memory and behavior. So I just want to add it as a disclaimer for anything that I wanted to say.
Thank you very much,
I think that's
everybody.
it. Thank you so much for the very thoughtful discussion. I thought it was great to get some insight from all of you and hear your views. So thank you for joining us, and thank you, Ezgi, for the great presentation that sparked such interesting discussion as well. And thank you all. And we're also going to be posting this recording onto our YouTube channel. So we'll send the link out to all of you if you want to share with your friends or family or anybody. And feel free to look out for additional presentations that we have coming up in the next few months as well. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Oh, Jean, do you have his hand raised when you left?